The planet had no name, not in any chart, database, or whispered myth. To Commander Elias Wren, it was simply Objective 47B, another uninhabited celestial body flagged for mineral scans. But as his shuttle sliced through the upper atmosphere, a shimmer unlike anything he'd seen rippled across the surface. Not water, not ice, something stranger. When the landing gear groaned against the ground, the cockpit flooded with fractured light. Elias shielded his eyes and stared through the viewport, heart thudding. The planet was a mirror. Not a sea of glass, but endless plains of upright, jagged monoliths, towering shards jutting into a dull lavender sky. Each one reflected his ship 1,000 times, angled and warped like a hall of mirrors stretched across a continent. The horizon shimmered with versions of himself, all slightly out of sync, as if some moved milliseconds too late or too early. Elias stepped out, his boots crunching on a polished surface that still somehow yielded slightly beneath his weight. The sky above was reflected below. He floated in a ghostly double world. Command, this is rain. I've landed. Terrain is highly reflective. Geological anomaly. No sign of life. Beginning surface analysis. No response, only static. He tried again. Still nothing. The mirrors made it impossible to tell direction. He marked his shuttle's coordinates in his HUD and ventured forward, each step accompanied by 1,000 versions of himself doing the same. But they weren't exactly the same. One, several shards down, didn't lift its leg in time. Another blinked too slowly. A third stared directly at him when his own gaze was turned away. Elias froze. That's impossible. He turned in place slowly. His reflection followed as it should. He raised his hand. Most mimicked him. But one, only one, remained still. He walked toward that shard, heart racing. As he approached, his breath fogged the inside of his helmet. The still version of him smiled. Not just a twitch of the lips, but a wide, knowing grin. Elias stumbled back. The reflection didn't. Somewhere deep within the endless maze of mirrors, a sound echoed. It was soft, like a whisper, but not in words. It was a memory. His memory. A child's laugh, a woman's voice. Then static again. He looked around. The smile was gone. All reflections stood still. Elias took another step forward, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if it was him who moved first, or the reflection. He wasn't alone. Not really. Not anymore. Elias pressed his gloved hand against the shard where the smiling reflection had stood. The surface was cold, so cold it seemed to hum beneath his skin. Nothing stared back now but his own tight-lipped expression, eyes wide with unease. He turned away, trying to reorient himself. His shuttle, marked clearly on his HUD just minutes before, was gone from sight. Only reflections remained, endless and distorting. The world was a maze, and he was already lost inside it. He began walking, slow, deliberate steps. The ground reflected the lavender sky above, making it feel as if he were suspended in a void. With every few meters he paused, watching the reflections. Most still followed perfectly, but every now and then one was late, or early, or wrong. One turned its head when he hadn't moved, another scratched its helmet while he stood frozen. He began counting them. 7. 7 broken reflections. They weren't just glitches. They were watching him. Elias stopped near a curved shard rising like a blade from the surface. It reflected the field around him in a warped arc, stretching and bending light. In it, he saw dozens of him, all frozen mid-step. And then one blinked. He didn't. Elias leaned closer. The copy was older. Wrinkles around the eyes, a streak of gray in the hair visible through the visor. That version stared back with an intensity that made his chest tighten. He stepped away, and the reflection took a step forward. He ran. The mirrored world stuttered with motion. His own reflections copied him perfectly, except the older one. It walked, calm, deliberate. As he rounded a pillar of glass, Elias skidded to a halt. There, just ahead, stood another version of him, arms crossed, unmoving. But this one wasn't in a mirror. It stood in the open. The reflection was real. Elias raised his arms slowly. The figure didn't mirror him. It just stood, watching, observing. "Who are you?" Elias asked, voice cracking through his calms. The figure said nothing, and then it turned and vanished behind another shard. Elias hesitated, heart pounding like war drums in his ears. A part of him screamed to chase it. Another begged him to run the other way. But curiosity, dangerous, irrepressible curiosity, won. He followed. Somewhere behind him, one of the broken reflections stepped out from its glass prison and followed too. But Elias didn't look back. The maze grew stranger. As Elias followed the figure, his figure, through the forest of mirrored monoliths, the reflections grew more erratic. Some shimmered like water, their images trembling and fragmenting. Others turned completely dark, offering no reflection at all. He passed one shard and glimpsed himself standing still. Only in the mirror his helmet was off and blood trickled from his nose. He didn't stop to question it. The silent version of himself he was following, older, steadier, and real, moved with purpose. Never hurried, never hesitant, just a few steps ahead at all times, always just slipping out of view. Elias broke into a run, ignoring the tightness in his lungs, the ache in his legs. He rounded a broad shard, and the figure was gone. What stood ahead now was something else entirely. An open clearing, if such a thing existed in this mirrored world, surrounded by circular shards that bent inward like the walls of a glass cathedral. In the center was a chair of all things, metal, worn, bolted into the smooth, reflective ground. Restraint straps hung from the armrests like limp hands. Elias approached it cautiously, his reflection shifting in the bent glass around him from 100 angles. He reached for the chair, then stopped. He was already sitting in it. The man in the chair, him again, was breathing. Barely, face gaunt, skin pale beneath a film of sweat. His helmet lay cracked beside him. Tubes ran from his arms into the ground, vanishing into the mirror. Elias staggered back. No, this isn't possible. But he remembered the chair. Not clearly, not entirely, but like a dream half forgotten after waking. A room, machines, a voice saying, "We need to go deeper to reach him." A flicker of movement behind him. He turned. One of the broken reflections stepped into the clearing. No longer a reflection, now a physical copy. Its visor was blacked out. Its body twitched as it walked, head cocked too far to the side. Behind it, another emerged, and another. Elias backed away from the chair, from his own unconscious body. What is this place? The figure he had followed, older Elias, stepped between the glass statues, raising a hand. "They're not you," he said, voice low and calm. "Not yet." Elias stared. "What's happening to me?" The older version looked at the chair, then back at him. "You asked to see the truth. You begged for it. Now you're stuck between the reflections and the real." "And the real is what? This question mark a trap?" "No." A faint smile. "A mirror, but not of the world." He touched one of the twisted shards beside him. "Of you." Elias looked again at the man in the chair. His heart whispered a single word, and for the first time he believed it. Coma. The word hung in Elias's mind like a dropped signal, still echoing through dead space. Coma. His breath grew shallow. The world around him, the endless mirrors, the silent copies, the older version of himself. It all shifted under the weight of that revelation. The clearing tilted subtly, as if gravity had taken on a new direction. No, Elias muttered, taking a step back. That's not right. I landed. I remember touchdown, the surface scan, the static. You remember what the mind lets you remember, the older Elias said. This place is the echo of your consciousness. It formed the moment your body went still. He gestured around them slowly. This world is you, Elias. Every shard, every path you've walked, every version of you that never was. Elias felt it now beneath his feet. The mirrored ground trembled faintly with each heartbeat. His heartbeat, or the heartbeat of the man strapped into the chair? How do I wake up? Elias asked, voice quieter now, smaller. How do I get out of here? The older man looked toward the darkening sky. You don't escape a mirror by running deeper into it. The twisted reflections, the broken ones, stood at the edges of the clearing, watching, twitching, waiting. One raised a trembling hand and pointed at the chair. You need to return to the source, said the older version. Elias turned to the chair. His own face stared back at him, pale, unconscious, barely breathing. His mind screamed to recoil, to run again into the maze and pretend this wasn't real. But he couldn't look away. The mirror beneath the chair flickered. For a moment it wasn't glass, but something deeper, an ocean of images, looping scenes from his life. His first flight test, the argument with his brother, the moment he left Earth behind. And then something unfamiliar. A dark room, tubes, wires, surgeons hovering over his body. A flat line, a voice. We're losing him. Elias staggered. I didn't die. No, the older version said. But you came close, too close. And now you're stuck between the versions of yourself that could have died and the one that still might. Another shard cracked behind him, splitting slowly from top to bottom. The sound was like bones under pressure. The broken reflections stepped closer. They want to take your place, the older version said. Each of them believes they are you, but only one of you can return. A chill coursed through Elias. Then how do I know I'm the real one? The older version gave a hollow laugh. You don't. That's the final test. The ground beneath Elias began to shimmer, flickering between mirror and void. A reflection stepped forward. Its face was twisted in rage, eyes wide with desperation. Another stepped forward, sobbing. A third knelt beside the chair and reached for the unconscious body. Elias felt something shift inside him, like a thread being tugged. The choice wasn't coming. It was already here. Elias stood paralyzed in the clearing of glass, the mirrored ground beneath him flickering like a failing signal. Around him, the broken reflections closed in, twisted versions of himself wearing pain like armor. The one that never left Earth, the one that died in orbit, the one who never wanted to come back. Each pair of eyes locked onto the man in the chair. His body, his life. Choose, said the older Elias. His voice no longer echoed. It sounded grounded now. Heavy, real. Before one of them does. The reflection sobbing now screamed a wordless, jagged howl and lunged toward the chair. Another tackled it midair. They writhed in a blur of motion, versions of Elias, tearing each other apart like wild dogs. Glass cracked, the world trembled. Elias took a shaky step forward, and then another. He heard voices now, not from the mirror maze, but from beyond, muffled, faint, pupils reacting. Hold pressure steady. They're trying to bring me back. He knelt beside the chair. The body was colder than he expected, the skin waxy, thin. He touched his own face, and felt a jolt ripple through his fingertips, a heartbeat. The older Elias crouched beside him. This is your last chance. Elias looked up, tears springing to his eyes. Why me? Why not one of them? The older man's expression softened. Because you're the only one who asked that question. The broken version screamed behind him. One hurled itself toward the chair, face contorted in fury, but Elias reached out with both hands and touched the temple of the man in the chair, and spoke, not aloud, but with everything in him. "I am Elias Wren. I am ready to wake up." The chair dissolved, the mirrors shattered. Light, blinding, pure, and absolute, poured through every shard. The reflections screamed, their voices turning to static. The glass exploded upward like water, leaving only the void. And then, a gasp. Elias jolted upright, the smell of antiseptic in his nose, the sharp sting of light above him. Machines beeped. A nurse called out. A hand pressed against his chest, urging him down. He was in a hospital, oxygen tube in his nose, electrodes on his skin. Alive, truly undeniably alive. As the room swam into focus, Elias whispered, "The mirrors." A doctor leaned in, smiling with exhausted relief. "You've been in a coma, 17 days, but you made it back." Elias turned his head slowly to the window beside him, and in the glass, for the briefest moment, a reflection stood still, just a heartbeat too long before it matched him once again. He blinked. It was gone. But the question remained. Which version had really returned?